Today, we're talking with Rishabh Sood, founder of GoML, about enabling GenAI adoption for business and how to use AI for growth. Welcome to BeyondSaaS. I'm Jason Niedle, founder of Tethos. We are a growth agency, and for over 20 years, we've been accelerating tech company growth through strategy, branding, lead gen, and conversion. Go ahead and check out tethos.com/podcast for a free report summarizing what nearly 20 amazing tech leaders have said here. Today, I'm excited to explore how to grow a tech company with Rishabh Sood. He, as I mentioned, is the co-founder of GoML, a data science automation services provider, helping clients scale their machine language adoption with AI consulting, AI app development, and large language model operations, which you might have to explain more to me because I wasn't sure I fully understood that. And I hear that Rishabh is an avid reader and a traveler, and he has his own podcast, the GenAI CIO podcast. Welcome, Rishabh.
Thanks, Jason, for hosting me today, and thanks for that, really good introduction. Just as a quick introduction, I run a company called GoML, as Jason highlighted. GoML is a full stack, generative AI and a data science platform services provider. So, really looking forward to sharing some learnings today, Jason.
I think it's so important, and everyone I speak to is figuring out how this all is going to work. So I really want to touch on that. Before I forget, do you have a golden nugget?
I do love reading, right? And there's this very specific book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari that really, touched me. And I continue to read. I think I've read that book 5 times. Not because I didn't understand it the first time, it just inspires me every time I read it. Because it just puts you back, into the very basic form of why there is a human existence even on this earth, right? What was the reason why this happened? But it also gets you to think, are we probably moving in the right direction? He puts up a lot of questions, how humans started, right? A very good, introduction that he made is that we domesticated humans, right? It wasn't the humans who had domesticated the world, unlike the, contrary belief. So yeah, so it just keeps inspiring me to probably be better self of myself, right? Every day, sorry. And so I, again, as I mentioned, probably I think I'll start the sixth read on my way back to India.
It makes me wonder, we're domesticating AI, I guess, and how is the path of AI's evolution similar to human evolution? So I bet you for an ML guy, there's a lot to learn in there.
Agreed. And probably, a lot of times, obviously, technology is there to help us, enable us, and all of us believe in that. I mean, a lot of these developments definitely are there to support us, and I'll probably will dive deeper into some of these. But I do get scared with some of these developments as well as we move forward.
So tell me a little bit about GoML.
So GoML is, we're close to almost 2 years old of an organization, 100 folks, mostly operating in the US and India. But the idea and the thought again with GoML is, and the vision that we had started with was that obviously everyone today is talking about technology in different tenets, right? I mean, people talk about technology probably in three areas, if I may, right? So how do you probably, make sense of the data? How do you probably bring out the real world data, ground truth data, right? Second piece, obviously, is how do you probably start consuming this data, right? How do you start making sense of this data in your day-to-day decisions? But I think the thing that actually changed probably a year back in the last 6 months is that how do you now probably build very task-focused, very mundane agents on top of these, right? Which is a new for everyone, right? Like, I don't think so we've seen this level of technology that actually can probably work at the level of a human, while not exactly AGI, but probably almost equivalent to something of that sort, right? So that's what GoML's focus this time is, that we probably operate across the second and the third layer, which is probably helping customers obviously first make sense of this data in the more intelligent, more the organic format, and then probably obviously start building some of these consumable task-focused agents to help them solve their business problems, right? Solving some interesting use cases more focused in the healthcare and life sciences space, like, building systems to reduce physicians' fatigue, early disease diagnosis, helping customers maybe adopt early. In fact, one of the use cases that we built helped the hospital save a human life, right? So that's the problem statement that we're looking at, Jason, and that's what makes this space more interesting.
So I saw that your title's the founder, but what's really the heart of your role there? How do you see your role?
I always say that the founder does everything that no one else wants to do, right? Everyone wants to do sales, right? It's a very interesting job for everyone. Everyone wants to do delivery. Obviously, it's messy, but it still excites everyone, right? So, but with that, joke aside, I primarily take care of the complete growth engine of the organization today, which includes your new customer acquisition, new regions entry, partnerships with AWS and Microsoft, people's management, policies management, etc., etc. So all the 9 yards, but primarily the growth engine for the organization.
Cool. And would you call yourself startup? What stage would you put yourself in?
I would probably say we are still an early stage startup. Right, while we've grown probably exponentially, like we grew from 4 members to 100 people, like close to a 4.5 mil revenue company in less than 2 years. This term is very close to my heart, Jason, right, because I always believe, and I was highlighting, right, the earlier organization that I was part of with a leadership role called Power Up. While we exited that company in 5 years, grew to a 250 member company, but we always called ourselves a startup because I always believe that term itself gives you the agility that you actually need to survive in this market. So I would probably still call us as a startup, and we continue to remain a startup for the next 5 years at least.
I do find it super interesting. There's something about the startup mentality that can lead to hyper growth, but then there's something about the established mentality that has systems and SOPs and a different sense of stability. And it's like, how do you marry those two things together is always really interesting to me.
I've been working very closely with AWS in different capacities, right? Managing partnerships, technology partnerships, growth partnerships with them. And I always follow the principle that they follow. It's always day one, right? Jason, you rightly mentioned, right, that probably when you start become very or being very agile, being very nimble in terms of your growth, how do you bring in that stability? I believe these are two separate tenets, right? One obviously is the way that you execute, right? So today we have processes, right? We are trying to set up processes as we grow into a 200 member company this year. But one nugget that I have from my leadership is that processes should not become a kind of a stopper for your growth, right? They should always fuel growth, right? So a process should not stop from me being a customer obsessed company. Process should not stop from me being an agile company, right? It needs to be it needs to enable all these tenets as an organization. But when it comes to stability, I still feel probably that stability is brought in from two tenets at an organization that's our level. One obviously is you have the right inflows and so on and so forth. We're a completely bootstrapped company. Would love to run the business like that. But more importantly, from the people's aspect of it, right? So I believe if you build the right people culture, our attrition rates have been less than 5% over the last 2 years, right? If you build the right people's culture, I feel these two tenets, if you have the right financial statements and the right people culture, will anyhow fuel stability, even if probably you're being very agile at the execution level.
Really interesting. And I mean, growing from 0 to 4.5 million in 2 years is radical growth, not an easy thing and not something that many people pull off. What do you wish other tech leaders knew about kind of that growth process?
So two things right over there again, and I'll speak more from my insights would come more from the world of again more ML AI and specifically in GenAI because that's where we operate into. I think the biggest tenet today is, or the hurdle that I see for businesses to grow is the tech education and enablement, especially in a world like GenAI, right? While everyone understands ChatGPT, like believe me, I've been into almost close to 100+ conversations with CIOs, Fortune 500 companies, 2,000 companies, and they still talk to me about I want to implement ChatGPT, right? So that's I feel the understanding of the technology itself, what the technology is capable of, right? We don't even go to the business level, right? That probably comes as step two, right? Is the biggest hurdle today. So my only nugget over there for everyone who's trying to enter into the space is that be very clear, right? In terms of how do you want to enable your customers? Like today, how do I probably enable or probably educate a CIO who's actually sitting or who's managing the business of a Fortune 500 company that what probably GenAI can actually do for their business, right? Overall, right? Not even getting into the processes level. So how do you probably first solve that tech layer of education, right? That has been really fueling our growth a lot. Number two, I really feel is that what I've seen with other businesses is that the mentality that we do everything under the sun, right? So you bring a problem to me and I'll use technology to solve that problem, right? While that was a very good statement, probably let's say 10 years back when people were moving to cloud, right, or probably even 6 years back when people were moving to cloud, modernizing their applications, etc., right? But today, it becomes a motherhood statement boiling the ocean, right? What we've seen working with us is that we focused ourselves only in 6 areas, right? Horizontally. And then vertically, we are focusing in 3 industries, right? Healthcare, life sciences, and capital markets. So that focus, I would say, or hyper focus is something that has really helped us probably get to this stage. And the third piece is not a nugget, but be at the right place at the right time, right? So that's more of a learning.
So can I ask, what's your growth goal for this year? You've been hyper growth for a while. Do you want to continue that forever? Do you want to ease that pace a little? Like, what's your growth goal?
So as I mentioned, right place at the right time. So I do feel that probably we are in the right space right now. Right, we played our cards well for the last 2 years. The focus this year, Jason, obviously the growth cannot stop, and that has to get more aggressive and exponential. Right. So while we've set ourselves on a target to probably achieve, 2.5x of what we had done last year from revenue perspective, or even more. Target, partnership wise, the goal again is to be, in the top five, which is going to be very challenging. Right, seeing the biggies in the market, but I think most importantly, it's as you know, I think we were speaking about this earlier. Is most importantly to build stability into that growth. So my focus this year is going to be to bring that stability in that growth right this year. How do we probably make that robust technology delivery engine to become more customer obsessed? But how do I probably bring in that tenet of customer obsession, right delivery practices, and most importantly, the best, technology backbone that we can bring into the company. So more than the sales engine, right? While obviously that will continue to grow, it's going to be the delivery engine that will fire up all the engines this year.
It's interesting. It's not the first time I've heard that, right? And at the same time, you still have to bring people in the top of your funnel and you still have to get people to know about you, right? So what are you doing in terms of marketing and sales so that the world knows who you are? A podcast, obviously.
Well, the podcast is more it's a friendly hobby that I try to pursue out of work. So I think from a sales and marketing perspective, there are two, again, tenets that we're actually dividing this into, right? One is that obviously an organization at our level, and probably this is another learning that we had at GoML, is building the right partnerships, right? Be it with the hyperscalers, right? We are top 10 with AWS, we are crawling our way with Microsoft as well. That actually gives you the technology arm, the right building practices, and so on and so forth. Right. Second is, we are working with some of these larger SIs as well, the GSIs, if I may. Because today, GoML, again, developing a very big niche into GenAI in these 6 areas, as I was highlighting, right, has built that space in for itself in the market, right? So that partnerships angle definitely works out because people are looking for niche partners in GenAI to implement, right? So these are the two areas that we are really firing up our engines from sales perspective, right? Obviously, third piece is, since second half of last year, we started focusing on building our in-house sales teams. We grew power up to almost close to a 6 million entity without probably just with 3 sales folks doing the role, right? So that's what I want to emulate over here. But every day is a new learning, honestly, Jason.
And are you reaching out via socials or trade shows, or because some of those industries are hard to get in to people? How are you reaching people in financial services, for example?
So one strategy that we are experimenting and has really worked out for us, Jason, this time is that we are trying to crawl our way, from the SMB to the mid market and slowly into the enterprise world. The enterprise strategy is a little different, as I was highlighting. We're working with some of these GSIs, right, to probably enter into some of these larger logos. But when it comes to mid market and SMB segment, right, that's where our focus is from direct sales perspective, at least to this year. Has been a mixture of, I would say, email marketing is dead for all we know. Right. I mean, I don't remember probably a day when I've not gotten close to 100, selling emails on my inbox, right? So, but what we are focusing on is probably building more robust engines, right? Which is happening either through the digital channels, right? Which is webinars, building the right technology leaders, right? To probably speak about how they are adopting, narrating their customer success stories. That has been the biggest, pull up. Second piece is the referrals engine, Jason, that has really worked out well for us. So if I'm probably working with a Bay Area company, right, and the starter is obviously well connected, founder is very well connected. If I've delivered well, he's brought in 10 more leads to me, right? So that engine is working out very well for me. And number three, most importantly, is that today, what is working out for us is that we, being, as I was highlighting, a startup, right, nimble, agile, but at the same time have the right technology capabilities, have the right validations from hyperscalers. These companies in the SME, in the mid market segment, do want to work with us, unlike probably the larger GSIs who probably lack that nimbleness today, right? So that marry, or probably combination of execution plus the technology capabilities and the validation of those capabilities is really working out well.
Interesting. So referrals, I think all the tech people out there love them and want them. How do you facilitate that? Do you have a standardized way that you make referrals happen?
No, I mean, I would probably say the best way to get referrals, or at least what has worked out for us obviously, is because these startup founders, etc., are very well connected across the YC. We work with a lot of YC backed companies, right? So the YC networks, right? The Harvard networks and whatnot. I think the best way is to deliver well, right? And that's my only nugget, right? Because if I'm doing this well for the Bay Area founder today, right? And this just happened, so right, we probably started building this for this single man army founder, right, startup towards at a very early stage, right? He was so happy, he actually probably invited us to a YC event, right, which is a closed door event, and I was able to get 4 more leads
Yes.
from there, right? So, I mean, my only golden nugget over here is probably deliver well, right? And
Deliver well.
these, YC-backed founders are not easy to work with. So yeah, so that's my only nugget over there.
So what's your biggest obstacle to hitting 2.5 times X this year?
I would probably say focusing on building that enablement arm, right? So today, the biggest hurdle that I again see probably in this market specifically is like because a lot of people sitting at the executive level do not understand the capabilities of this technology very well. For them, it's still chat GPT when they speak about GenAI. The adoption obviously is very slow. They're doing a lot of POCs, they're doing a lot of pilots, but what's moving to production, right? Actually,
Mm-hmm.
so that still remains the biggest challenge, right, for us, Jason. That we're going to focus on. So we are building a lot of our offerings around how do we do enablement. So these workshops just to probably enable customers in terms of what is the capacity, what is the capability of this technology, right? The second obviously is building a differentiator, which we obviously did last year, but probably sustaining that differentiator for ourselves, right? If you speak about GenAI, every SI I would say probably is doing GenAI, right? Maybe they're doing that for the opening the door perspective and so on and so forth. But for GoML, that's our bread and butter. Like we only do generative AI based services. So what we are focusing on, as I was highlighting, building our niche, writing into 6 areas, and we've actually built something called as boilerplates. Well, I'll not get into details of it, but kind of a repeatable framework which helps customers go live with their pilots in less than 4 weeks, experiment in less than 1 week, right? So iteration is probably much faster than what you'd see in the market, right? So that's how we're building and sustaining our differentiator.
If you had some kind of a magic wand and you could change something about the business, the industry, whatever, that would supercharge your growth even faster, what would you change?
That's a good one. I'll probably get $10 million and distribute it to my employees. See, I think as I was highlighting, and the biggest hurdle for growth, right, for us or the technology company that's operating in this area today is understanding of this technology. And when I say understanding, again, I'm not going to probably the level that, what are different models available, what can ChatGPT do, it can build a chatbot for you, blah, 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 right? So I'm more talking about, how is this more business oriented, right? So probably if I pick up an Anthropic model today, what is the capability that I can actually bring in to enable my business, and what is that ROI that actually I can achieve, right, with that enablement? If I had a magic wand, I would probably wave that wand and make this world a better place for GenAI folks by giving that understanding better, right? So
I love it. What should other tech leaders know about AI, and in particular, like how they can use that maybe to grow their companies?
I think the first step to this is, and how we also approach this, Jason, is which has helped us heavily, is let's not even talk technology, right? What all of us need to understand is technology is an enabler, right? So today, when I enter into a conversation with a CIO and he starts the conversation with ChatGPT, right? I just probably ask them to stop over there as well, right? I mean, just probably in the last 10 months, we built a consulting arm, right? And the idea and the thought of this consulting arm is not to be revenue focused, right? This arm is more to probably work with customers, help them identify the right use case, which obviously is the lowest hanging fruit. There's some tenets that we follow. It cannot be very simple because it doesn't prove the business value, but it needs to have a clear business ROI. Right? So these two tenets needs to be very clear with that case. And then let's start talking technology. Right? I think when we started working with some of these, mid-market customers and enterprise customers, we don't even talk technology in the first 2 weeks of engagement. That actually probably comes in the third week once we've identified the use case, right? So my only nugget over here would be probably let's not talk technology at the face of it, right? Technology is an enabler. Let's first understand what is the problem statement that you really want to solve, identify a clear ROI, right, out of it that you really want to achieve. And I'm pretty sure the technology is so mature today that you'll be able to probably help you achieve that.
It makes so much sense. I would never call my plumber and say, "Hey, let's talk about your wrench and what other tools you have." I'd say, "I have a leak," right?
That is such a beautiful analogy.
Like, why do we call a tech company and talk about the tool?
And see, to a certain extent, that wasn't a wrong approach. Probably when, let's say, we were talking about cloud migration, right? So probably someone calls and probably asks you, right, okay, I want to probably migrate to AWS. Okay, that's a good driver, right? But why do you want to migrate, right? So that becomes a conversation. But today, if someone says, I want to implement GPT, that really pisses me off.
So I wonder if because I read your website and all that, and you're talking about the what you do, but I wonder if on the marketing side, because you're talking about the clarity and the education, that maybe it's more about being more clear on the problems that you're solving, and this having this big giant range of problems you solve can then help me see, okay, look, you can solve those. Who cares about the tool?
Absolutely. And there's something called as a leaderboard that we actually run, right? It is similar to what Hugging Face does on the open source models. Ours is more focused on closed source models, where we talk about business problems. If you go to that leaderboard, it just probably lists on top 50 problems that we've solved across 3 different industries, right? It doesn't even list anything from technology perspective, right? That's primarily just for the CIOs and the business people to just go through and just get an understanding what industry is solving, right? What this technology is capable of, and draw parallels from that for their businesses.
Perfect. So the world's in massive flux. What trends do you see for the year ahead?
So I do see probably 3 areas where, again, from the world of GenAI that we're actually approaching. One, I really feel, and this probably is a shocker for all of us, right, is that the customers are moving from, well, this was always a debate, right, build versus buy, right, and more often than not, when probably this was very business intensive, it was mostly a buy, right. But that trend is changing slowly, right? Because of how fast you can now probably build some of these workloads, applications, automate these agents, and so on and so forth, right? We are moving more toward the build phase, right? And while again, I'm not again telling anything new. SaaS probably is slowing down a bit in that case, right? So I'm seeing that probably as a big change, right? The second piece that I really feel today is that I think probably when we started adopting this technology, we were still probably talking about larger business use cases, right? So probably how do I automate? We're working with this healthcare or probably a provider. How do I automate end-to-end admin process for a patient, right? But what that now has changed in the last 6 months, and I think will continue, is we'll start talking about very specific business problems, right? So within that chain, right, what is the problem? The problem statement is that the customer's onboarding onto a hospital network is slow. So how do I probably now automate the first step of it? And that obviously is leading us into more agentic workflows, right? Rather than probably building these applications and so on and so forth, right? And I think the third piece that I really feel probably would be more where again I'm seeing probably the world moving towards is that we're moving to a more business value based adoption, right? While probably till the early last year people were still talking about let's do a POC, let's understand what technology does. I think people now understand more or less what technology does, right? Obviously there's enablement education that needs to be done, but they're now moving more to the business value. How do you now derive business value from these systems, which is a good trend for all of us.
Absolutely. I know you have a hard stop. So this was great. Thank you very much. Where can our audience find you?
Always happy to catch up with anyone. I'll drop my coordinates probably in the podcast as well once Jason hosts this. But just tap me into my email, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to probably chat.
The website is goml.io, goml.io, GoML.
Right.
Rishabh, thank you so much for being on Beyond SaaS. For leaders in mid-stage tech looking to grow, we drop episodes twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you can find me, Jason Niedle, at tethos.com, tethos.com. And don't forget to grab our report at tethos.com/podcast. Please drop any comments for me or questions for future guests below, and don't forget to share with a friend. Until next time, this is Beyond SaaS.